Good evening. Thank you all for coming this evening for an update on the Wapiti fire. My name's Brant Porter, Public Information Officer for Rocky Mountain Area Incident Management Team 1. We'd like to thank all of you for taking time out of your Sunday to come out and join us this evening for an update on the Wapiti fire. On behalf of the team, I'd like to thank everybody here for the warm welcome that we've received since we've been here in town. As a courtesy, we'd like to ask everybody to silence phones throughout the meeting. We are live streaming this meeting via Facebook Live, via the incident Facebook page. We have a whole host of speakers lined up for you this evening to give you that update on the incident. We're going to ask folks to hold questions until the end. We have maps that are set up around the room, and we're going to have speakers at those maps afterwards that folks can find their way to get their questions answered, and we'll identify where folks are going to be at the end, and a handful of us will be up here at the front to help kind of direct traffic for all of those questions that you might have. For the folks who are joining us online, we ask that you put your questions into the chat. We have information officers that are online that are going to be answering those questions, and if there are questions on there that they can't answer, we'll be taking those to our subject matter experts that are here to get them answered for you. So, with that being said, purpose of the meeting tonight is to give an incident update, and to do that we have Brad Petruska, Operations Section Chief with Rocky Mountain Team 1, Jeff Colton, Incident Meteorologist with the National Weather Service, Glenn Lewis, Fire Behavior Analyst with Rocky Mountain Team 1, Levi Madole, your Custer County Sheriff, Kirk Flanagan, Agency Administrator for the Sawtooth National Recreation Area, and Dan Dallas, Incident Commander for Rocky Mountain Team 1. With that said, I'd like to hand it off to Brad Petruska for Operations Update.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Brad Petruska, Operations Section Chief with Rocky Mountain Team 1. If we could go to the operations map, we wanted to start that because there's a lot of interest. That's why you're all here. So let's start right around Stanley and Division Kilo. So what's going on today? The clouds, the overcast, the light drizzle that we had yesterday moved out slightly earlier than expected, about 6 hours or so. Got a little more sunlight out there, and as a result of that, fire activity picked up. It did not rain enough to appreciably change anything in the fire environment. So what's going on today? That's a little blurry, but I'll work through it. So here's our updated IR perimeter. Right after that run a few days ago, we weren't able to get infrared flown over it because clouds came in. We can't see through clouds with infrared. So we had an estimated perimeter last night. We got an IR. Even this, it's actually a little narrower right there in some spots. But moving on, we're going to keep going. Starting down right here, closest area of heat to town, right outside of the Homestead subdivision near drop point 60, which is right there. Fire was really close after that run a few days ago and just kind of fell apart right where it was. We've had crews, engines, right now helicopters, scoopers are on order. They're having some issues with visibility getting in there, plus air attack, all engaged heavily right there. And by engaged, I mean what we're doing there. The fire is just kind of backing, actually, for lodgepole rather gently, coming down to some control features, some dozer lines, things like that we have around Homestead right now. Our crews are in there making sure that any torching doesn't result in spots towards the valleys that are at risk down there. Bigger picture as we move forward, seeing where the fire gets to, we are going to be initiating firing operations, carrying that fire with the intention of, over the next couple of days, getting it around Iron Creek community down to the south here right outside of Stanley. The reason being for that, I'm trying not to steal weather and fire behavior's thunder here because they usually go before me and set the stage, but there is a dry cold front coming. So with that dry cold front, those prefrontal winds, a little increase, not what they were last time, but it's really the post-frontal winds that we care about. So about Wednesday or so, those winds turn northwest. So that's kind of our timeline on this side, on this east side close to Stanley. Looking over the next 48 hours or so, What we would like to have accomplished is getting fire to 21 and around the subdivisions, the homes, the infrastructure, to our control feature here in Iron Creek community. We've had crews scouting Crooked Creek as well as Iron Creek. Now, just to say that this is our target doesn't mean that if there's opportunities in here to turn, we wouldn't do that. But we're getting more and more confident that that is not a location that fire behavior is going to allow us to hold over the next few days. So with that, moving it around Iron Creek is our first priority, getting it up higher on the landscape. At the same time, very well aware of the values that are further to the south, making plans and assessing out there. Let's go a little further north, up to Valley Creek, where the fire went over Highway 21 a few days ago. So Valley Creek area, cow camp area, out in here, structures are in good shape for the most part in the big meadow system that's available out there. We have had resources mopping up this edge. There are a number of spot fires that aren't indicated on this perimeter in the Halstead fire scar. We've been taking action on those where they do pose a risk to come down through some of those grassy fields back towards the homes and the things like that. In here, this is actually a little narrower in reality. We've had Division Papa to the north. Taking a look at that, seeing on this chunk outside of the Halstead scar what we're going to be doing with that. And same thing in the Halstead. There's a few different options. As you get further into burn scars around here, our tactics might change a little bit, just given the overhead hazards and the hazard of those trees falling, impacting a firefighter. So when I say the tactics change, we're talking about things like dozers, aircraft support, things like that, things that there's a cage over the operator of that equipment. So taking a look there with the intention of bringing this back in to the Trap Creek area and fire scar out in that country. As we move further north in Papa, this is a spot fire from the run a few days ago. It's about 2 to 3 miles out. And again, this is what was picked up by IR. There are, I am certain, numerous other spot fires in this area. So what we're not doing is coming in here and just trying to line this, right? Because there is a whole bunch of fire that's still completely unanchored out there. What we are looking at is a number of different things. One, seeing if we can leverage any of these creeks to confine further northern fire spread. Two, looking at how effective Highway 21 would be to keep fire from moving any further towards values on the offside of Highway 21. And three, some other actions out there. We are feeling like we have a little more time, right? We've got those prefrontal winds that are going towards the Thatcher area. A little change in fuels in there. We're feeling okay about that. And then obviously with the post-frontal coming back into the main fire, this will certainly become active, but because of fire history and what this fire just did, a little less concern up there. As we move across the peak of Highway 21, we've been working really closely with Idaho Transportation Department, and what they've got going for us is both from the Stanley and the Loman side twice a day, opening that road so we can get our resources back and forth across it. We are working on removing snags, hazard trees, things like that throughout the day with professional fallers. So trying to address the highway impacts at the same time because it's impacting us trying to get our folks and supplies back and forth as well. But we can keep going down. Division Mike, stop there. Looking at a few creeks coming over here into the Bull Trout area. Same story, getting an eye on them, seeing what we're going to have to work with in the future, building our plan out a little bit further. Let's go south over to the more of the Loman side where we're supporting our resources more out of Loman there in Boise County. Division Whiskey yesterday took a drone, a UAS with IR, given that we had a low cloud ceiling, couldn't get fixed or rotor wing aviation up. Got to look at the fire perimeter. It did stay to the east of Warm Springs Creek, so similar story up in Mike with a little more focus is we're looking at seeing how far up we can get folks on the trail system in there with the intention of, if we're not going to be holding Warm Springs entirely, seeing what we can do to get it into some rocks, natural features, old fire scars over here in order to limit that southerly spread back towards the 10X area and points further to the west down near Loman. Area where the fire did impact quite a while ago, a number of structures in the Bear Creek, Sawtooth Lodge area. Work continues in there. And so what we've got going on, we've got these named divisions, right? And that's where the fire lines are coming from. They're working for those folks. We also have 2 groups out there of structure protection resources. So what those folks are more focused on is those hard assets that are out here on the west side in the perimeter, on the east side, what I just talked about around Stanley. So we have 2 other divisions, one on each side, focused solely on structure assessment, improvement, protection measures, things of that nature. So simultaneously, while all the firefighting's going on, we have those divisions focused on coordinating with our divisions, implementing structure protection measures as fire progresses past an area. So that's basically the story over here, is our structure group continues to secure heat that's around these structures. During the first push of this fire weeks ago, a few of them were lost, and then 2 days later another one was. And that's really common in urban interface areas. It's not typically that first initial flame front, it's the residual stuff that cooks back up. Maybe no one's there at the moment, stuff like that. So that can happen, and that's why we continue to be focused in this area. As we look to the south, this fire is a little different in that it's on both sides of the highway. A little, I'm not going to say closer at all, but a different scenario over here from a structure standpoint, just given the orientation of this fire. So while we're still, looking around Warm Springs for control options, we have taken our structure group and we're starting to implement structure protection measures, specifically in the 10X area and points further to the west. So that's going on. We are coordinating closely with both Custer and Boise County sheriffs for evacuation planning, and that'll be our next map that we'll throw up right now. While he's changing maps, I do want to point out we have night divisions and operations that are staffing both sides of the fire overnight. When we do start firing more, as long as there's conditions that are favorable for us, they'll continue that firing. And as fire moves past structures, that's their job as well, is to focus on where fire is past them. So trying to keep a seamless operation 24 hours of the day around the values that are at risk. From an evacuation standpoint, no changes to announce to you all right now. I'm just going to highlight on the Custer County side, Zone 1 remains in go. Zone 2, Stanley, remains in ready. And Zone 3, set. It is set. Yellow is set. Zone 3 is in ready, down further there. We've worked really closely with Custer County Sheriff and EM. We've developed some trigger points, not for a hard, it hit this line, time to do something different, but more of a conversation piece. Okay, it's getting to this point. We already discussed what we were going to talk about, so let's have that discussion. The fashion in which fire impacts any area kind of means different things, and so we're not trying to say that these are hard and fast thou shouts. We're saying that is a point basically for us to reevaluate the current evacuation levels. On the west side of the fire with Boise County Sheriff and EM having those same conversations. So no changes to evacuation levels. Over the coming days, what we're working to do is just solidify some of the planning that we have internal specific to evacuations, make sure everybody's on the same common operating picture, not only our team in the forest, but all of our sheriffs and EMs and stuff like that. So information gets from one of our divisions seeing something, letting us know, us telling it through our team contacts, and getting it out to the people that need to know in order so that we can keep everybody informed of what's going on. With that, I'm gonna pause because there's probably going to be a lot of very specific questions that there's no way I can answer all of, and hand it back to Brant.
Thanks, Brad. Next, we'll go to Jeff Colton with National Weather Service.
Hi, thank you, Brent. So my name's Jeff Colton. I'm what they call an incident meteorologist, or IMET for short. It's a little bit easier to say IMET real quick. I'm a part of a team with the National Weather Service. There's about 60 of us that are active nationwide right now. And we're currently training about 36 new IMETs to help fill in some of the workload. But we are deployed nationwide to incidents, whether it's a wildfire, a flooding event, Super Bowls, whatever they need us to support, we're there. We are, well, I don't know. There's 60 of us, and It's a lot of work, long days, and we're out there. What are we doing? We're providing direct support for the incident command team, for the firefighters, the general public. We attend meetings, we provide briefings, and we generate forecasts on a daily basis. We're monitoring radar. We bring automated weather stations with us to help collect weather data. We launch weather balloons right from the field. As soon as we get our helium, we're putting up weather balloons right out at the incident command post or somewhere out on the incident itself to collect weather data and information. So what do we do with all that? We are providing those forecasts. So just a real quick history. This is a lightning-caused wildfire. I was looking at the Stanley community. You guys average about a ½ inch of rain during the month of August. Well, so far in the month of August, we've seen rain 4 days. 90% of that rain fell on 2 days, and that was back in the middle of the month and early on in the month. So yesterday we picked up 1/100 of an inch, but and today I saw sprinkles, so we got a trace. So we haven't had much rain. It's very typical to what I see in western Colorado, where I come from. So I'm used to the dry atmosphere and the lack of rain, but it's just kind of one of those signs. We've had little over a 1/4 inch of rain so far this month in August, and we normally get a ½ inch here. So it's been super dry. Well, earlier last week, since this is Sunday now, we had a strong low pressure system develop off the Pacific Northwest coast. And what that did is it brought in some strong southwest winds last Thursday and Friday. It also brought in some really, really dry air on Thursday. We saw relative humidities fall to between 8 and 14% out there, which is very, very dry. That's like Phoenix dried. So we're bringing up all that hot, dry air across the fire, and winds started gusting out of the southwest. It's around 25 to 30 miles an hour. So that's enough to get some activity going. And then on Friday, due to those balloons that we were launching, I was on the Boulder fire to the west, and we have some IMETs on the Middle Fork complex to the west. We were launching weather balloons collecting information. We were able to see how dry the atmosphere was still, and we knew that this low pressure system was approaching and getting closer. So we know the winds were going to actually increase on Friday. But we did have cloud cover moving in. That would bring those relative humidities up. But the incident meteorologist decided to issue a local red flag warning on Friday, and we had wind gusts 40 to 50 miles an hour. So I don't care what the relative humidity is, when we're blowing that strong, we have activity moving along. So that was a great call by the IMETs that were supporting this fire at the time. And then that low pressure system finally moved onshore, and we started to see the benefits of that Friday night into Saturday morning. I keep pointing to this, we're going to get to this in a second, but Saturday morning, we saw the relative humidities come up and the winds dropped off rapidly. And we saw cloudy skies, cooler temperatures, and we even got that 1/100th of an inch of rain in Stanley, and we picked up about 1/10 of an inch up high on the fire. So there was a little bit of rain, not a ton. So one of the products that we generate on a daily basis for the firefighters and for the team for planning purposes is something called a weather matrix. This is a tool that we use to help determine different fire weather parameters out on the line. And one thing our fires like is a lot of sun. The more sun, the more critical the fire weather conditions. So this number across the top of this is cloud cover at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So for the next week, we're not expecting a whole lot of cloud cover. It looks pretty clear, so that August is going to go out dry. So that 2600s I believe we've had is going to be it for the month. Temperature-wise, we're going to see temperatures start to climb for the next 2 days. But Brad mentioned a dry cold front coming through. So last Friday night, Saturday, we had a cold front come through, but the winds did not shift much. It was kind of what I call a backdoor cold front in the west, where it comes up from the southwest. This is a more traditional cold front coming down. It's going to switch the winds from the southwest to the northwest, and we're going to see prefrontal conditions pretty gusty out ahead of it. And the more yellows and reds you see on a day, the more critical the fire weather conditions are on that day. So you can see how Tuesday we start to warm up. We see a big jump in temperatures, and our minimum relative humidity is starting to drop off pretty good on Tuesday as well. We're going to be down in that 20 to 25% range, but this is one of those days that I would be watching. We'll be watching this one really closely, and making some calls in the next 24 hours or so on what we want to do with that. But this cold front is due to sweep through here early Wednesday morning, late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, and it's going to switch the winds from the southwest to the northwest, and speeds will be in that 8 to 14 miles an hour for a sustained wind, with peak wind gusts around 20 miles an hour right now. This could be a little bit stronger depending on the amount of cold air we're able to pull in with it. With the 7-degree temperature drop, there's going to be cold air, and we're going to see a little tighter wind field potentially on Wednesday. Then the rest of the week, we see temperatures start to climb, but you watch this cold front, being a dry cold front, it's ushering in much drier air, and we see those relative humidities really plunge. And for a red flag warning in Idaho, we need wind gusts of 25 miles an hour or greater, or sustained wind of 25. And you need relative humidities of 15% or lower. So we're starting to see a lot of things align for more critical weather conditions as we approach the latter half of this week. So trying to think of anything else. I think that's pretty much summary. Dry, 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 and low relative humidities. I wish I had better news. I usually bring rain to fires, and I did that one day, but that's it. I apologize for not bringing more. But
when you say wind direction, is that wind coming out of or going to?
Out of. So if you put your back to the wind, it would be blowing behind you. So, so this will be coming, across valley. And we have automated weather stations deployed right now. We actually had one burned over that's no longer reporting, so we actually have to get that one replaced. So we have some more replacements coming up. All right.
Thanks, Jeff. Next, we'll go to Glenn Lewis, fire behavior analyst with Rocky Mountain Team 1.
Good evening. I'm Glenn Lewis, fire behavior analyst with Rocky Mountain Team 1, as Brant said there. So just want to talk a little bit about the situation, how we got here. And could we bring up the main ops map, please? So when the fire started, basically, and both Brad and Jeff kind of referred to this a little bit, it's been very dry out here. And so a lot of the dead, especially the dead and down fields, have gotten very dry out there. Also, you have a lot of standing dead in some of the timber stands up there, and that's also dry. It's exposed to the wind, it's exposed to the heat, etc. All of those fuels are very dry. And in some places, that's very heavy loading. And in some places, it's mixed with dense conifer stands. Sometimes some of the conifer stands don't have a lot of dead in it, but they are very dense. And so when you have a fire that is burning in those very heavy, very dry, dead and down fuels, those are very adverse conditions for fighting fire on any day. Those are challenging no matter what you do when you get out there. They produce a lot of heat. Even when they're not moving very quickly, they produce a lot of heat. And that heat gets lofted, end up with a lot of spot fires out in front of it. And those are the kind of things that put firefighters in danger, not just the heat, but then now you have the possibility of getting trapped in between the main fire and a spot fire. So again, those are very adverse. The condition that was set up there makes for very adverse firefighting conditions. The one thing that was kind of holding back a little bit of fire behavior is that the live fuels, the grasses, the brush, those kind of things, seasonally, because it hadn't had a chance to completely dry out, still had some moisture in it, and that was kind of slowing down the fire in some of those areas where that stuff existed. Again, we're a couple weeks later into it, those fuels are starting to dry out, and they're becoming available, and they're contributing more to fire spread now. So that's kind of the condition that sets up this condition. And again, regardless of what the weather conditions are on those days, on any given day, that situation sets up pretty adverse conditions for firefighting. So then again, as both Jeff and that guy over there, sorry, I only work with him all the time. So I apologize for that. Sorry. So red flag conditions came in. Very hot, very dry, very windy conditions. And those three factors together it's really important because one of those is important. If it gets hot out, fuel temperature rises, things want to burn more. If it gets dry out, there's less moisture to push out, and the heat is more effective at transferring the heat to start more fire and continue the fire going. If the wind's blowing, and the wind's blowing really hard, that also pushes the heat and lowers the flames down, pushes it right on directly onto the fuels that are in front of it. So those three things together, when those increase at the same time, you take an already adverse condition and you make it exponentially worse. And so that's what we see what happened on those days. And you can tell a little bit when you look. One good hint that you had really high winds is long, skinny fire silhouettes, right? Because it didn't have a chance to spread out. It's pushing that fire so fast and it's spotting so many spot fires out right out in front of it that it doesn't have a chance to grow out very, very wide, right? So key indicator, if you ever see another fire map in the future and it's long and skinny, you can guarantee you there was really high winds on the day that made most of it spread. So all those conditions that came along, we can see it pushed this fire out here. Adverse conditions made exponentially worse by the red flag conditions. Now we not only had the spotting that was occurring because we had very receptive fuels without those conditions, now it's extremely prolific out here. There are spot fires all over out here. The fuels are very dry, very receptive, so every ember that's lifted, we're getting more and more chance for spot fires out here. And as Brad was saying, see, I remember now, as Brad was saying, that's why out here, you could go out and get that, but you can never pick up all those spot fires that are out there, right? So that's really important. So that's what happened on those red flag days. You will notice that even with those conditions, in most cases, you can see old fire scars here on the map, and those are areas with lighter fuels. And you can see that in most cases, the fire burned into them a little bit, it carried into them a little bit, but then it laid down, right? Indicating a little bit lighter fuels. You can see how it kind of snaked in between these fires right here. You can see it burned into this one a little bit right here. It really didn't get spotted into this, but didn't really burn there. So you can see that those prior fire scars did help check up the fire. It's not going to mean that it's never going to get through them, but it did help check up the fire. And so that's kind of the situation there. When the wind stopped blowing, the fire laid down, had an opportunity. Some of the folks that were here did some really good work at picking up some of this stuff here to keep it from spreading farther. And so one of the things that we do that's really important, this is where I get to act important. All firefighting, when you learn very, very early on, one of the first things that you learn are the 10 standard fire orders, and one of those is base all actions on current and expected fire weather and behavior. And that's because we're not going to go be effective here, right? So that's what we're talking about there. So we need to know what the weather is. We need to know what the fire behavior is. Very adverse conditions right here, right? These were very adverse conditions, so we know we're not going to do a good job of being out there. So the idea with a lot of this, and they've already taken advantage of this, is for us to get some control over it and take those adverse conditions and turn them into advantageous conditions for us. And so what Brad was talking about a little bit earlier, coming in here and trying to get this some line burned out here around these structures and head that off, because we're going to get some southwest winds on Tuesday, as Jeff said, right? So we're going to get a little bit of push out this way, which when you have these exposed fire edges, right? That's where the fire is going to spread from. We all know that. So we have a chance for those southwest winds to push out this way a little bit. Then the next day we have those northwest winds coming this way. And now it's not going to be as dry, and it's not going to be as windy as it was on those 2 days. So we have that advantage, right, in front of us. By coming in here and taking the fire under our circumstances and us controlling the fire behavior, we have an opportunity to come in here and cut this off before it can get a big run, before those adverse conditions come back in with I will just say, let me take a step back. That moisture that we got basically had about 24 hours of all that humidity, all that rain, the whole 1/100th of an inch of it basically lasted 24 hours. and that it's gone. So we're right back to the fuels conditions that we were before. The only difference is that the live fuels have gotten a few days drier. So we're right back to those adverse conditions. We're not going to have as adverse of weather coming in on this, but we will have adverse wind direction. So by coming in here and doing what Brad is talking about here, again, that's our opportunity to take advantage of fire behavior and use it as an advantage to us to cut this off before this thing can build that heat. Again, these fires build heat. They like sunlight, as Jeff was saying. When you get sunlight on these, that's the thing that pours the coals to these things. That's what gets it going. And so once it builds that heat, it wants to keep going. It wants to keep self-perpetuating. So by coming in here and taking the heat out, taking away the opportunity for that fire to build that heat and let those adverse conditions kind of take over and start compounding each other, that's kind of the plan there of what that is. And so that's how we are basing our actions on current and expected fire weather and behavior. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Glenn. Next up, Custer County Sheriff Levi Madel.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? All right. Can I get the evacuation map, please? Thank you. Okay. We'll let Boise County take care of their own. You zoom in right over here. This is where everybody wants to be, right here. Okay, so let's start with road closure. Okay, road closure today. Okay, we enacted the road closure here 3 days ago, but we also kept things going. We kept things moving. We kept things open so people could get in there. We moved it today to escort duty beyond ITD compound. As of right now, we are at a hard closure for everything from the road closure on in. This will be predicted upon fire behavior, firefighting efforts, and all of that. Okay, we don't have anything going on down here in Iron Creek right now, I know, but we have a lot of efforts being put forward by the teams, and we're going to have a lot of fire fighting capabilities down in there. We don't want to hamper their efforts. We don't want to get in their way. We don't want to get somebody hurt. So right now we're enacting a hard closure right at the stop here, okay, right at the marquee, the notification board, okay. And that is a hard closure the rest of the way over. It's just like from Banner Summit on down to Lowman, that is a hard closure. Firefighting only. This is firefighting apparatuses only. Notification zone. We are in a go zone in zone 1. Everybody's been out. They've been told to get out. They've been notified to get out of that zone. Okay? So we don't hamper firefighting efforts, capabilities, not to mention for safety. Stanley is in set. Okay? Now I know. Okay? There's trigger lines here. And just because the fire's moving, it hits a trigger line, or they do a back burn, it hits our trigger line. That's just the time for us to start talking. That's all that is. It doesn't mean I'm going to go Stanley. That doesn't mean I'm going to do that. Okay? I will not, because I understand that will cause an economic problem that was just as bad as if I caught the whole town on fire anyway. Okay? So, amber fallout is my concern. Heavy amber fallout causing too many spot fires within town that we can't control. We've got to evacuate. That's a go order. Also, if this fire does something to affect a sweep, to affect an evacuation route 75 north, or sneaks around down here and eventually pops itself out over here, okay, to block off an evacuation route south. Those are my indicators that go for Stanley area, zone 2. Just because it hits a line doesn't mean I'm going to enact that, okay? So if anybody's concerned about that, don't worry. That's just a time for us to start talking about next step, where's it going, fire behavior, how long, those kinds of things. Zone 3, Forest Service compound and living faces down in here, okay, they're in a ready set, just because, or a ready condition, so that if we do have to enact here, We can change this to a set position. We can start getting things, but we don't have to wait for this one to change to a go to get that one to get a set or a go. If this fire sneaks around here, we're already in a ready down here so we can enact that. We're also working on these zones down here, possibly placing them in a condition depending upon what the fire decides to do. Things are fluid. Things are constantly changing. I know. We just need to take care of each other, watch after each other, okay, and be informed. I'm not going to steal thunder. Where is she at? Raise your hand. Oh, there she is. She's right back there. I'm not going to steal her thunder. She's going to talk about Code Red. She's going to talk about notifications. Okay? Routes of evacuation. If we have to evacuate. If we have to. Like I just said, 21's closed. Don't go that way. Okay? North to Chalice, south Ketchum. I'm not going to steal her thunder again, but we do have Red Cross shelters set up in, or prepared to be set up in Chalice if anybody gets displaced. Okay? We are going over plans right now for reentry and repopulation. Even though we're in the middle of the fire, we are starting to talk about reentry and repopulation and how that goes. We lost a yurt, okay, up at the northern end of Valley, and I'm still working on it, and I believe we lost a skidder, okay? No structures have been lost at this point, all right? We are in solid. Thanks to the fire team. The fire team's doing an awesome job keeping that from happening. All right. Thank you.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
How are you dealing with the holdouts at Iron Creek? Do we have a few still?
Yes, we do. I've got deputies that, went door to door. Notifications have been given out. If they stay in there, not to mention the notifications on your phone, but we're going to have deputies and officers going around through the area prior to any kind of additional evacuation, or if that fire does hit a trigger line, that's one of those things. I send my officers down into those areas just for verification, to get them out, to kill them and get them that notice. Because when you get right up underneath of it, you can't see it. So, all right.
Thanks, Sheriff. Next up, Kirk Flanagan, Agency Administrator from the Sawtooth National Recreation Area.
All right, good evening, folks. I'm your area ranger and the AA. Sorry to keep meeting you here, but thank you for coming out. I want to give a big shout out to Team 1. They only got here yesterday morning, and their camp was impacted yesterday morning, and they are up and rolling with their camp in the Sawtooth Valley. They have a camp over in Lowman, and they're going to establish a couple of spike camps along the highway when it's safe to do so. So kudos to the team. So we're at August 25th. This is our 4th fire team that we've had in the area. So I recognize the stress, the economy, the impacts. People are out of their house thinking about it daily, as you can tell. So when I invite a team in, I, as the agency administrator, share intent with the team. The intent on this fire, as you guys and gals all know, I hope, is structure protection and making sure to keep that fire away from the homes, businesses, etc. Going all the way around from Stanley to Lowman, around the Horn to the Boy Scout camp, you name it, that's our focus. We call it high values at risk. So that's where they're going to put almost all of their focus. What I'm trying to tell you is I'm not asking them to go out and chase every smoke. That spot out there, that's not the focus over the communities. I know you know that, but I just wanted to share my intent. I also wanted to share that because you're probably not going to see black line, meaning containment, around this entire fire. This fire is going to be on the landscape for a significant amount of time because it's rough, nasty country, and there's a lot of hazards out there. And getting down into Barron Creek in this neck of the woods, or where it may go here and here, it might not be worth putting firefighters out there. I think of firefighters as a son and a daughter, and do I want to put them in those spots where there's no values at risk, are very limited, and there's a ton of overhead hazards, rolling boulders, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to share my intent, and I wanted you all to know that there's going to be fire on the landscape for a significant amount of time. We have the fire growth, obviously, and we have to modify our closure. So I'm going to go next to the closure and just walk you through this. The map's not out, it's not finalized, but it's going to grow significantly. And I'm going to start down in this neck of the woods. This is Barron Creek right here. So this has alignment to go toward redfish. We're not going to close redfish, so don't think that. Oh, okay. So we're going to go pretty much follow the bench lake closure. We're going to come down. We're going to go likely all the way to Hell Roaring Trailhead. We're going to dip down, go to the lakes, what's past Hell Roaring, Imogene, Edna, I think, back all the way across. Then we're going to come back up here, and the Nelly Fire is over here. We're going to connect side by side with a Nelly Fire, come up over here. You guys know where Bonanza is. Come down to Sunbeam, and we're going to come back across. There's going to be some variance in there where certain things will be open, but we got to put a closure in place, because what we don't want to do is put a closure in place, change it the next day, change it 2 days later, et cetera, et cetera. So my concern in here is this starts to have alignment. We've got people hiking up the canyon. Obviously, it's open, so we need to pinch some of this off. I want to keep as much open as possible, but that's probably the future in the next couple of days where you'll see a larger closure. So I wanted folks to be aware of that. And I think that's it. I'll be at a breakout group and can take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. Next up, Incident Commander Dan Dallas.
Hey, good evening, folks. Dan Dallas, your incident commander here. The good part is almost everything I could say has already been said. Oh, good. Leave the map up for me. I know your time's valuable, but I also know that your backyard's important to you, and if you're close by to an open flame front, your property and your house is really valuable to you. So appreciate the interest tonight. In my case, I've lived in 7 states now. You're kind of wondering, what are these strangers doing here? Well, we do this all the time, but a lot of us aren't that well, we are strange, but we're not strangers. In my case, where I live now in Colorado, my backyard is Mount Blanca, which is 14,326 feet tall. And just, I wasn't purposeful about it, but I'm sure glad I did. The house I bought and have lived in now for 17 years, the sun comes up behind Mount Blanca every day. So it's important to me. Same way here. When I was in my youth, the Wood River Valley was important to me. And if my parents had a whole week that they could give up, then Stanley Basin was incredibly important to me and still is. So just wanted you to know that. I just want to point to a couple things that have been said several different times. You're going to see an incredible amount of activity in this area here, from here to here. The reason for that was, I'll just make it really simple, because of the weather we've had a southwest wind that caused this feature that was wind caused, basically. Wind-driven fire is what we call it. And so that's the predominant wind comes out of the southwest, to get to the question that was asked here. Come Wednesday, we anticipate that. Northwest. So a whole bunch of open line here, and we're doing everything as fast as we can to get some control on this end, this edge of the fire, until that wind changes. Just reducing that. So what I want to relay to you is all of that. That's a planned event. It's supervised, it's purposeful, it's planned, and we're going to do all we can to reduce that risk with that. So anyway, I'll stop there. It's really important. If you folks have further specific questions, just go to there's 1, 2, 3, 4 at least maps that I see hung up, including this one, so that's 5. If you've got a specific question, there'll be people there that can answer your question, or go grab somebody that can. All right? Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you. As Dan said, we are going to have speakers from tonight, positioned around the room. Custer County Sheriff and Emergency Management is going to be over here against the wall. The other experts from the team are going to be throughout the room. And please, if you have specific questions, you don't know who to go to, come up front. We'll help direct you to who is in the spots. So thank you all. That concludes our meeting for this evening. Thank you for coming. Yes, ma'am.